The art for today's video is not related to the podcast I will be talking about. And as always, Daryl Recommends Podcast is a podcast recommending series and shouldn't be mistaken as a reviewing one. Opinions about each show are my own and should not reflect what each podcast has to offer. Content warnings aside, I believe if any recommendation in my series interests you, you should give it a chance, regardless of how I personally feel about the show.
Jonathan Harker's journal, kept in shorthand. The 3rd of May, Bistritz. Left Munich at 8:35 p.m. on the 1st of May, arriving at Vienna early next morning. Should have arrived at 6:46, but train was an hour late. Budapest seems like a wonderful place, from the glimpse which I got of it from the train and the little I could walk through the streets. I feared to go very far from the station as we had arrived late and would start as near the correct time as possible. The impression I had was that we were leaving the west and entering the east, the most western of splendid bridges over the Danube, which is here of noble width and depth, took us among the traditions of Turkish rule. We left in pretty good time and came after nightfall to Klausenberg. Here I stopped for the night at the hotel.
Inspired by Dracula Daily, Regarding Dracula does an audio version of the event, posting new episodes of entries for Bram Stoker's Dracula on the days which they happen. So, if you have never read Dracula before, because I will be going to, the plot of Dracula. Dracula is a story that follows a group of people who detail the mysterious events caused by Count Dracula, starting with Jonathan Harker's visit to Dracula's castle in Transylvania. In this show, the episodes follow the entries in the book, because there is a diary/news report format for the book, and although the entries in the book are not in order, they do have the dates for them. So this show posts those entries in the order they happen instead of the order that you read it if you're just reading the book normally. And they could be in the episodes themselves, because of this, can either be less than a minute long or all the way up to an hour long or 2 hours long. Because we've had, at the point of me recording this, we've had at least one episode that was almost 2 hours long. The plot of Dracula is really good. I'm going to get to a bit more into the plot later because the story of Dracula is a separate thing from this podcast, even though this podcast is about Dracula. But there's some stuff that I do have to mention about Dracula if you plan on listening to Regarding Dracula, and you may not be aware of it. So let's go into first why I like the show. The best thing about the show is because last year, I had read Dracula. I had gotten a copy of it for Christmas, and this was before Dracula Daily was a thing. But I had gotten a copy of Dracula, and I started reading it around the time Dracula Daily became a thing. I didn't follow Dracula Daily. I read the book at my own pace, and I finished it before the entries ended back in November of last year. So I was completely caught up by the time Dracula Daily was over. And the way the show does the book is so good. The acting in it is phenomenal. They got a great cast. The cast pick for all these characters was the best cast they could possibly pick, and it adds on to what is already a good story, because I do think Dracula is a very good book. And everybody does such a good job. There's a lot of voice actors from shows I like Johnny Sims, Graham Rowat, Alistair Stewart, Beth Erie, and so much more, and new voice actors from shows that I plan on listening to, I just haven't gotten to yet, so it's great to see these people beforehand. And of course, if you want Corinne Cruffley to sing a song as Dracula, then this is the show where it's at. I'm sorry, I needed that. It was the funniest thing they did, because that's the one thing with the show. They have musical numbers. Not in the middle of an entry they'll break into song, but there's certain episodes that have a song play at the end, and it's just done so fucking good. It's done so well. And I really like it. The episodes are posted on the days that the entries happen, and so if you want to do a yearly re-listen and do it in the style of Dracula Daily, it's there. And the days are also the dates are also mentioned on the episode titles, so you never have to worry about trying to find the actual dates of the episodes posting themselves. And I think that's really nice. It's really good. And the sound design and the acting choice just adds it all so together. The sound design for this show is done so well, just with the sound effects, with background noises, with trying to do the difference between the stuff that's being written down and the stuff that's being recorded on the phonograph that Jack Seward records on. It's just done super well. As for the story of Dracula itself is a good story. I do have to give a major content warning to it though. is that Dracula has a lot of medical malpractice, racism, ableism, and xenophobia. And I believe there's certain scenes in regarding Dracula that they've rewritten just to be slightly less so. I've never actually like taken my copy of Dracula and compared it to like the scenes in the show, because most of the time when I listen to regarding Dracula, I'm not home, and it's not like I carry my copy of Dracula around with me. But they do give prominent warnings at the beginning of episodes where this kind of stuff is prominent. It's just certain stuff that unfortunately you can't expect a book that came out in 1897 to be the most modern and culturally sensitive, which is the worst side effect of trying to do anything with a book that has that so ingrained in it. That is a thing, though. So that's something that you're sensitive to. I would keep an eye out for that, or, well, an ear out for that. But I do believe they do re-listen to some stuff. Jack Seward is Mr. Medical Malpractice, and the amount of times that he casually just talks about being like, let me just do everything I can to make this one guy upset that I know makes him upset, just so I can keep calling him a lunatic. It is very, Jack Seward, why are you like this? Awful man. And it's also just, as, you know, the typical warning for any horror media. You got your minor gore, your horror, nothing like super serious. I would say if you're pretty, like, if you could listen to something like the Magnus Archives, you should be fine with this. It's not extreme horror gore like basically. And yeah, overall, this is just like a really great retelling of an already pretty good book. Everything about it is just really good. I like the format for it, and I think like my own personal annoyance, that's just my personal annoyance, is this really short episodes, just because I'm typically driving when I listen to shows. And regarding Dracula, like on days I have work, is like the first show I listen to. But if it's like the episode's like a minute long, I'm just sitting in my car waiting to leave, being like, let me listen to this episode first before I put something that's longer on. I know I could do it later, but the episode entries for the 1 minute ones are just so short. I can't get anything done unless I listen to this episode. But that's not an issue with the show itself. That's just a me thing. That's me. I'm going to be linking down to their Patreon down below, and of course, any other social medias that might be relevant enough for you to go check out. And if you have any suggestions for podcasts for me to listen to, give them to me. I want them. Give me your podcasts, and I will add them to my list. I also have my socials linked down below, so if you would like to follow me, you could go ahead and do that. So please go do that. I very much would appreciate it. And goodbye, and have fun listening to another show about vampires for your spooky Halloween podcasts. Goodbye.